Hi, and welcome to our masterclass today on how to address risk and master security in 2019. My name's Louis Newman. I'm a security specialist here in the UK and delighted to be joined today by Danny Lawrence and Hila Meller. I'll let you both introduce yourselves.
Thanks, Lou.
Danny, if we start with yourself.
I'm Danny Lawrence. I'm the GM for Threat Intelligence and Investigations within BT Security. And we're going to chat through today and hopefully give you an understanding from my perspective of how the practical interpretation of threat intelligence within our security solutions.
And I'm Hila Meller. I'm the Vice President in charge of BT Security in Europe. And I'm basically in charge of helping our customers, very big organizations in the world, of protecting themselves against the ever-changing cyber threats that we see. And today I will help Danny in this Masterclass webinar, mainly by showing the point of view of our customers and what they see that is happening in the market.
Brilliant. So it makes sense, Hila, to start straight away with what our customers are seeing and how are you seeing their perimeters changing?
So the perimeters are really changing right now, and it's really interesting, driven a lot by digital transformation. So if in the past, and I'm going to use now a funky analogy using exotic fruits, okay? Stay with me, bear with me here. So if in the past networks looked more like a coconut with a very hard perimeter, and a soft internal, and it's very easy to identify where the perimeter is and how to protect against external threats. The situation is different today, and organizations are actually looking more like an avocado. And so the borders are kind of less clear in this situation. There's more mobility, IoT, cloud. And in these kind of situations, organizations need to adapt themselves and start using different security elements. So they must be much more proactive by using activities such as red teaming or threat intelligence. We also see a growing need for identity and access management. And in this context, we have to operate and help our customers.
Of course, and staying on that theme, Hila, how are you seeing your customers' digital transformation journeys happening and their landscapes becoming revolutionary, really?
So once again, digital transformation really changes the way that our customers do business. They now use more cloud and mobility and social media. Those same technologies that are now creating new business opportunities are used by security groups in order to create more evolution and provide more advanced tools and services. So, for example, AI is now used also in the security context to do much more sophisticated cyber analytics. Quantum key distribution or software-defined networks are really changing the future of security and networking. So very exciting technologies are coming and changing the landscape for us. Security in the context of digital transformation is also changing and becoming more complicated. 20 billion IoT devices connected to the network by 2020. That's a big number. It makes things more complicated to manage. 57% growth in attacks. Really big numbers, and it indicates how risky the situation is. Now, one of the biggest challenges that my customers see is actually not technological at all. It's about the shortage of skills in the market. And if we look at different statistics that are now being published, they're talking about the shortage of roughly 1.5 million people that just don't exist in the workplace environment that the market will need by the year 2020. People with security skills that are just not there.
And what does that mean from a BT perspective, Hila? In terms of the changes of the threats we saw last year and then what you expect to see coming from that as well?
So to understand the BT perspective, it's really important to understand the BT landscape, the BT network. BT is a global company. We are active in 180 countries. Our network manages a terabyte of data in every second. We see 600,000 events happening in every second. So a lot of data flows through the BT network that allows us to do a very interesting analysis and then share them with the world. We also work a lot with many partners. We have 1,600 partners working with us that help give us more insight and more information. We have a big team of roughly 3,000 people. So with this context, we have very good visibility to what is happening in the market. And we really see that risks are becoming more persistent, much more evident. Serious growth in DDoS. 18,000 high-impact DDoS alerts that we've seen. Our cybersecurity platform is capable of analyzing billion proxy events on a weekly basis. So a lot of volume of information is going, and we see that. And I think that one of the most interesting things is that we actually see and manage 120 cyber attacks every month. So there is a growing threat, growing risks, and we can see that through our network.
And how useful is that intelligence to take to your customers, Hila?
So, as I mentioned earlier, our customers, they need to be more proactive because things are changing. And threat intelligence allows our customers to be ahead of their game. They can identify threats early on, in the right time to actually do something about it and prevent big problems from happening.
So, Danny, a great time to bring you in. I mean, 3,000 employees in 180 countries. Where'd you start?
Well, where do we start? Indeed, I think the important thing is to understand what is intelligence. You know, ultimately, intelligence is information that's used to inform decisions. It has to be an asset itself and form part of your whole security process. I think you have to strip that back to basics, because intelligence itself is anything, is any information that's been put through a process of assessment and evaluation. But ultimately what you're doing with that is you have to identify what intelligence is important to you.
So I think that's really key. How do you know what you need from that information? How do you sort of filter it down and actually look through it?
Well, Louis, I think too much information is unhelpful. Of course. So you have to understand what is it you're trying to protect. What are your most valuable assets? And only then, when you understand that, you need to understand is what is your security posture at that time. What is your attack face? What does it look like? What sort of target are you? Once you understand what it is that you're trying to protect, and then you have to try and understand who it is that will be interested in taking that from you, only then can you start to develop your plans around how you're going to try and protect that. And that's key for my team to support that, looking at BT inwards and looking at who's trying to attack us, learning the lessons that we see, as Hila refers to, globally across the world in 180 countries, and trying to interpret that and evaluate that and make that a useful piece to allow us to secure ourselves and secure our customers.
And we talk about, I think we talk about BT as a general at once, but actually if you look inside BT, you've got things like global services looking after customers, you've got EE, and you've got BT Sport. How do you really then filter down and look through and decide which data is key for which areas, and actually understand it that way as well? Well,
I think that's where we take it bit by bit. If you look at BT, we've got EE, we have BT Sport, we have PlusNet and the other parts of the group, and you really have to understand the needs and goals of your business, as I said before. So we have to look at ourselves and understand what it is that we're trying to protect. So certain elements of our business are around customer data, are around PCI data, and certainly the impact, for example, of a BT Sport live event being disrupted. Those are, in theory, the assets and the services we can't afford to lose. So we have to look at those key stages, is understanding the needs and goals of the business, and then really understanding what are your greatest risks. And then only then can you start to put an intelligent a collection plan around those threats, harm and risk.
I'll come on to the scale we have on the slide in 1 second, but Hila, it'd just be interesting to hear, are your customers interested in the way we protect BT Sport and areas like that as well, to hear how we do it as well? So
that's an interesting angle, I would say, because whenever we speak to customers, the fact that we also provide our internal security, that we protect such a high availability and scalability service, that create more credibility for us. Again, our customers, they want to be more proactive, and so they rely on us to provide them those skills, those capabilities, because those are actually areas that for them to develop them internally, it will be almost impossible. So they do come to us because of our experience in protecting BT in order to provide them those skills and capabilities.
And I think the process we use, actually, Danny, is outlined on the slide. I don't know if you wanted to give a bit of into that as well?
So those are the stages about understanding your needs, understanding what your greatest risks are, and only then, when you start to develop your own understanding of that, can you start to protect yourself. So as Hila refers to, the first question we get asked in almost every event or every meeting with customers is, well, what do you do? You know, not what do you sell, but what do you do? So we learn lessons ourselves to not only protect BT, but to move on and work to protect our customers from the lessons that we're learning. You know, because it's key. If we don't protect ourselves, we're not going to be in a position to provide protection for our customers either.
Yeah. Of course, and we've heard, well, I certainly have internally heard you talking a lot about thinking laterally around threats now as well. I don't know if you want to give a few words in terms of...
Look, I think it's about curiosity.
Yeah.
So Hila's alluded to the fact of having a skills gap, that there is 1.5 million over the next 18 months or so. As you say, 2020 is not far away. So the issue what differentiates us is that we have a team of people that are curious, that they want to understand what that really means, what it means to us, what it means in the wider society, where can we learn those lessons. So that lateral thought is not only an automated process, which an element of threat intelligence is, but it's having that human interpretation of that real understanding and drilling down into what that means and driving further and deeper into that.
Almost trying to get into the mind frame of being an attacker.
Yeah, of course. It's the you know, you have to have people processes and technology there to really have an effective threat intelligence capability and a good security posture.
So what sort of sources of intelligence are your team looking for when they're thinking about trying to be a hacker? What sort of ways are they looking for things in terms of customer data and stuff like that in areas? Yeah,
so a lot of that is sitting down with a customer when we're talking about that piece. But obviously, attacks affect more than one sector, more than one customer. So some of the stuff that we will use is open source. We will use closed source sources, human intelligence sources, but as well paid for services. You know, we work with 1,600 partners. Some of those are threat intelligence partners that we have trust and confidence in the way that they look at what's relevant, that they're out there looking on our behalf and sharing what we're seeing pan industry, cross sector, cross industry.
And I think you spoke a little bit earlier as well, with all these sources coming in about information overload. How do we look at doing things like ranking what we see as important information, whereas there's a lot of noise, I'd say, in the security industry? How do we decide what is actually key information for us?
Again, that's the evaluation of the intelligence itself. So we understand what the threats are, and we understand how we have an effective collection plan out there to gather this intelligence. But it's trying to really understand the impact of that. So that's a key thing. So we will push out our products, our daily bulletins, our weekly bulletins, and our service to the customers. We will look at them in a pure threat, harm, and risk matrix, and give some weighting and scoring to them. That with the bulletins come the matrix. So there's some clarity around whoever the audience is that's picking that up. Because there's different types of threat intelligence, is that we can pitch it in different ways. But again, some of the partner feeds that we receive are scored. We have trust and confidence in what they're saying, and hopefully our customers will then have trust and confidence in that there's quite a robust matrix around not alerting people to the false positives, so to speak.
And Hila, you mentioned earlier how key it is for your customers to have their finger on the pulse and be reacting quickly. Be interested to hear it from your side as well as yours, Danny, in terms of both why does BT need to react quickly, but also why do you need to be able to go back to your customers very quickly with the answers?
Yeah. So what my customers are asking me is actually very, very simple. They want to have actionable intelligence. And what does it mean? It means that this information that we share with them, it should come on time, be relevant. It should be digested so they can actually act and avoid potential threats and risks.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I think, Danny, you've got a slide in terms of what you believe actionable intelligence and the ways that we classify threat intelligence in BT.
Yeah, so the slide that you've got here is what we refer to as an intelligence cycle. If you put an intelligence cycle into a search engine out there, you get 20 different theories behind it. But in simple terms, the concept is sound. It's about that planning and direction, and that's the phase that I speak to you about, understanding what your business is, understanding what your risks are, putting in a collection plan about where, and that's a service we would provide to our customers around actually where we see those threats are being discussed about. And so we will put some element of scanning and collection around that. Once we then get that, is what do you do with it? as we've spoken before, even this morning, around information overload. You can buy service providers and intelligence or security services and intelligence from a lot of different places and read lots of different daily bulletins, and you start thinking, well, what am I going to do with this? So the collection piece is important, and then obviously the processing of that information and understanding what you're going to do with that is equally key. The really critical phase is the analysis and production of those threat intelligence bulletins and the products and the automated solutions to that, and then finally disseminating that to the customer. And at that point, what's equally important is understanding where that changes your threat landscape. So the actionable intelligence we would feed in allows you to reassess your position, and then allows you to change that collection plan. So it's a completely living cycle around that.
Cool. And I think the different types of intelligence which we were talking about is up now. Sorry about that. Which I'll let you talk over it, but also it'll be interesting to see as we go through which are the most key for your customers, do you think, at the moment? I'll let Danny explain it, and then if you could just let us know in terms of when we go through.
I think that in a whole, they're really interested in most of them. When it comes to the more strategic ones, they would like to be aware of them, so they could take them into consideration when they start planning their future initiatives. But with all honesty, it's all of it. It's all very relevant. Yeah.
I mean, let's start the strategic, and we'll work around, I guess, the dial. As you say, strategic threat intelligence is a long-term vision. It's almost where the business needs to look ahead over the next 0 to 3 years. Some strategic threat assessment of what you're looking for. And that's a board-level piece. It's a tool. And you can also consider that if you're moving into a new market, be that a new part of the business or be that a new geographical location. Is threat intelligence can actually inform you of who your competitors are, what the likely threat is for you moving into that market, who it's likely to have an impact on, who may want to consider some more negative tactics. So that could be a competitor, it could be a nation-state issue if you're trying to break into a new market. So threat intelligence is actually at the planning phase for that as well. And then we move around to tactical, the tactical side of intelligence, and that's really looking at the tactics that an individual might use. So the vulnerabilities themselves, the themes of that, the emergence of ransomware, for example, or the emergence of the new thing, the new trend. We spoke about DDoS, or all those sort of the volume attacks that are happening. So that's a different element around that. Then you're looking at the technical side. That's really then drills down into the IOCs, or the real data that's talking about and that's generally a more automated process, because you want those quick time threat issues to be dealt with probably at the firewall or at the outside of your business, that are just dealing with those and knocking those out when they land. And then we talk about the operational side, and that's really these are more organisational specific issues that have been identified. So we'll look at open or closed sources, chat forums, where the organisation is being mentioned or where a specific target is being discussed. We can then feed that into the business or into the sector to deal with that.
And I think the key thing, looking at this just from my side as well, is actually, Hila mentioned it earlier as well, these processes have been put in place firstly to protect BT, and then we replicate them. It's not something new that we're doing. And secondly, you talked a lot about automation as well. I know we're starting to automate in BT in some of the ways that we do this, but are you starting to see that working against us as well? Are the hackers and the criminals starting to automate things as well?
Of course. I mean, the last 3 or 4 years now, we're talking about these DDoS as a service, and my career prior to joining BT was in law enforcement in serious and organised crime and a cyber environment, and the issues you encounter then was the emergence of these stressor tools or these ransomwares that you can just go and rent that, and you can knock out your competitors almost. You can knock their website down on Black Friday, for example. There's some big deals that you could do, and the hackers are evolving. They want to succeed. They want to monetize what they do, because that's ultimately what bad people tend to do. Yes, there's the hacktivists, or there's the people that just want to disrupt. But primarily, it's about somebody wants something that's of value to them, and that's at a cost to you. And how do they monetize that? So, yeah, it's evolution, and the threat intelligence part is important to that, to be trying to look what that's talking about, be ahead of those environments that are talking about wrongdoing or in this environment, cyber attacks. But, you know, threat intelligence can be overlaid in a physical environment as well, you know, so... Yeah, it's we have the team that are forward thinking and looking for those issues emerging.
And it's key that our team is also interacting with partners, interacting with government, with law enforcement. Hila, how do you see those relationships helping BT and improving our team as well as our customers?
So we consider collaboration, information sharing as a core priority, actually. And it's because of a simple fact, really. Some of those cyber threats that we need to deal with go beyond borders, go beyond countries. And multiple organizations that might be in different locations will have the same enemy, in a way.
Of course.
So those adversaries are basically common to multiple organizations, and by sharing information between us, by collaborating with law enforcement agencies, we can be more powerful in our fight against cybercrime. And in fact, BT was the first telco in the world to collaborate with Interpol. And Danny, I believe you just met Interpol just recently to discuss that, right?
Yeah. So I was out there a couple of weeks ago meeting with the Cyber Fusion Centre, understanding where we can work together, and as you say, cross-sector as well around that. So we continue that relationship moving forward. I recently signed a similar ongoing relationship with Europol and the EC3, the European Cybercrime Centre there. And similarly with law enforcement agencies in the UK, with the National Crime Agency. We were part of the industry group, the cyber industry group within that. And actually that's a natural transition from the need-to-know environment, where I think business were always nervous to talk to one another for competitive advantage in the past. And now, as Hila says, this is just everybody's going to be subject to the attack. So, you know, I think that's really important, that transition from the need-to-know to the dare to share to the need to share environment is really important now, and I think there's a lot more openness and honesty around using our partners to feed that information in, to potentially anonymise it, to share that out. So Interpol's mandate really is they're obliged to work with nation state and law enforcement, and that's what they're mandated to do. However, I think that's evolving into relationships with coming out to industry and asking for our expertise, if you like, to contribute to the strategic threat assessment that they are seeing globally. And the benefit is hopefully that we will start to be able to unpick the relevant information that those organisations have for us.
And at that table, are we seeing similar themes being shared in terms of same concerns, same ways of doing things, or is it real learning from? What do you learn the most from when you're there?
Look, I think it's important that we don't know everything. You know, if we knew everything, we wouldn't have 1,600 partners that we work with. You know, from conventional security to cyber security to threat intelligence. You know, there are partners out there that we are their customers too. But actually, what stands us apart, I think, is our ability to not only deal with our position as, you know, one of the world leads in security, particularly, you know, the lead in Europe, and have a presence in 180 countries. So there might be some geographic specific attacks that we see that other organisations wouldn't see, but that's just because our sheer position. So what then stands us apart is having the right people who can not get information overload and have the platforms and the processes we have in BT to evaluate that, make sense of it, and feed it out to ourselves and then to our customers, to stop things happening before they happen, in effect. WannaCry is a perfect example. You know, 6 weeks before that, we started to see that emergence, and we warned the customers. And some of those customers took heed of the warnings and some didn't, and other industry and other companies lots of companies were obviously affected by that. But you start to see that emergence coming, and our position of strength is to be able to warn and inform.
I think that nails it in terms of we've spoken a lot about threat intelligence being quite proactive and before an attack happens.
Yeah.
But I'd be interested to hear how you think threat intelligence also helps you build that instant response and actually responding to an attack.
Look, that's a good point, really. So we have really close relationships with the IR team and the CERT team within BT. We're on the calls, incident emerges, we're on it. Because very, very quickly with an IR, you want to learn those lessons and who else needs to know, clearly. The slow time response to that is obviously at the end of those incidents, is to have that post-incident review, understand really what is it we can learn from what happened, and fix ourselves and fix the customers and fix other customers that may be impacted on that. So that then informs the threat intelligence knowledge base, that we can then share and work with.
So we've seen a lot about what we've seen in 2018, Hila. Be interested now, the name of the Masterclass is actually 2018 and looking into 2019. What do you see coming in 2019 in terms of security?
Yeah, so looking at what's ahead of us, so, unfortunately, cybercrime is a very profitable business. And so there will be a demand for hacking tools, for attack tools. So we do expect to see a lot of tools becoming available for hackers to use them. On the same time, the more sophisticated one, we do expect them to start leveraging loopholes or backdoors in some of the legit software that is out there in order to penetrate organizations in a more sophisticated way of attacks. We do believe that in 2019, data will still be a target for many of those attacks. Data has a value, as we've seen in some of the recent attacks. Availability will still be a target. And as organizations invest more and more in security and become more secure, we do believe that supply chain attacks will grow as an attack vector. Basically, adversaries trying to attack an ecosystem of an organization in order to penetrate or get access to sensitive information that they want to access.
And Danny, what about yourself in terms of BT in 2019?
Yeah, I think it's really important that Hila said there. It's the supply chain attacks are possibly a vulnerability that might be overlooked, and I think we rely on
16,000 partners.
Well, of course. What's the due diligence we're doing around how they're integrated with the network? I mean, even as far back as Target, I think in whatever year that was now, 3-4 years ago, probably. That was all to do with the vulnerability of somebody's machine that was not part of the organisation ultimately. So I don't think the attack methodologies as we see on the screen there now are any different. They're still going to be doing the same things, but the bad people and those that are trying to harvest that information and data are working day in, day out to defeat the security mechanisms that we're putting in place. So their job is to defeat that, and our job is to try and defeat them. So, yeah, I don't think anything's going to be a great deal of change. I think with you it's going to be around data and the value. And a lot more, not necessarily ransomware, but extorting on the basis of the data because of the GDPR threat or the fines that could be involved. So will businesses be susceptible to be buying back their information rather than having a ransomware and chasing the Bitcoin, so to speak?
Of course. So I think we've got some time now for some questions. You can submit the questions through. So we've got a couple that have come through. So I think this first one's for Danny. Danny, what type of intelligence tools does BT plan to spend its 2019 budget on? I think that's from one of the suppliers listening. Hoping
Good question. Good question. Well, look, I think we'll be looking at a variety. We work with our suppliers, our threat intelligence partners, to understand where they're driving that. We set them our expectations that we need to improve and we need to be ahead of the game. We need to be trust and reassurance that they are ahead of the game themselves. The development of our ability to reach into open source and closed source continues to be driven. That's a real art to understand what's going on, what people are talking about, and actually assessing when they stop talking about it, is that a catalyst for something? Because they go and the going quiet is always a bit of an issue. Human intelligence continues to be, something to be considered. How do we understand? How do we exploit the knowledge of people in those forums? So it's a whole plethora of activity, really.
No, definitely. And I think that's very true. Yeah. Another question's come in. I think it's for both of you. What specific attacks do you think had the most impact on companies in 2018, either financial or reputational? One sticks out to me. I don't know if it's the same as yourselves.
Yeah, I think the highest profile attack in the last few months has obviously been around BA, and I'm speaking from no position of knowledge here about that incident. The Target incident, it's the TalkTalk incident. The BA incident was the one that is in recent memory. But I think what was important around that rep damage is, look, the fine's the fine, or whatever that may be, if there was such a finding that's the case. But reputationally is can you recover from that? And it doesn't matter about how big an organisation you are, your reputation could be negatively impacted. So what I found interesting from BA was the apparent openness from the start. This has happened. We're working with the card companies. People were getting fresh credit cards arriving on our doormat before they'd realised what was going on, and that possibly is the importance of, okay, threat intelligence is what it is and security is what it is, but you need to red team. You need to test these concepts. You need to have the playbooks that, should this still happen, what is the response around that? So, really understanding that business continuity and return to normality piece was key, and so I think that attack. That was all across the papers suggests that it's about the response as well.
So I think there are two key takeaways from the BA attack, and once again without any internal information or involvement of what happened there. First one is that even companies that invest a lot of money in security and are clearly protected can still happen to them. Okay, so this is the number one take. No one is safe, basically. Second takeaway is that you really need to have a good IR and resilience program in place, so you can recover. If something like that happens, and it can happen, you can then recover and act properly, which is what we've seen in that case.
I was going to ask you actually, Hila, after an attack like that, what is the... do your other customers get in touch to say, look, we want to check things, we want to make sure our incident response plan is in place, and we want to make sure we're not with these vulnerabilities? Is that the most common call you almost get after an attack?
Well, usually yes, specifically from customers that are from the same industry. That sometimes use the same cloud services or the same partner ecosystem. So yes, we do see a growing interest following this kind of attacks. It creates more awareness in the market, clearly. So yeah.
Of course. Danny, how can smaller companies get access to some of the intelligent insight that we get from the likes of Europol and Interpol, as you mentioned?
Well, and I think, as I touched on before, they're obliged or they're mandated to serve nations and law enforcement agencies. So the difficulty is they're not going to provide that information out unless it's through a law enforcement badged approach. So also to inform that and to enrich and add value to the information they have. That's why we're working, as other industry are, with those to give them some corroboration around what they're seeing, and actually to put things on their radar that they may not have seen. So, it's difficult for small businesses that we just have to ensure that once we, you look at protecting ourselves, we push out the bulletins that everybody can subscribe to. So these are a daily bulletin that we push out, or weekly bulletins too, that provide context around some stuff with the weighting and the scoring attached to what we're seeing.
Okay. And we've got another one in from the audience. So threat intelligence in software technology is considered to be the new futuristic approach. However, without proper state legislative regulation and corporate governance policies, it can be a hindrance towards this false positivism. Is this a global issue within corporate economy?
Well, I would ask you to ask the question again, Louis.
Can we scroll to the top of it again? Is that all right? Thank you.
No, I think threat intelligence in software technology is considered to be the new futuristic approach, of course. But the issue I touched on earlier is automating a process is inevitably that process itself has been created by a human side of that. So we all talk around the SEAM process, that the threat intelligence is integrated into that from our point of view, from the event management piece. But actually, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. You can't automate all hits. We all talk about the false positives, the false negatives, and anything else. So underneath that, you still have to have that capability to interpret and understand and evaluate that. Yeah. Fundamentally part of the intelligence cycle there. So you might get all these hits, but actually, what does it truly mean individually, to the sector, to the business, to us? To then actually, it might direct some AR, it might direct some research, it might direct something else. It doesn't necessarily is a perpetual cycle of the same thing, re-asking the same question, because it fires off a number of actions. So,
of course. No, I think you've answered it. I'm just going to... Is this a global... So, how realistic or true is the statement that suggests there is a shortage of security skills?
So, I can really testify from a first-hand perspective that we are growing our business, right? And we are recruiting constantly, looking for security talents. And it is difficult to find those people out there with the right experience, with the right skills, with the right talent. So yes, definitely. And the same challenges that we see in hiring, also our customers have. So it is very clearly a market-wide issue and a challenge that all organizations in this space suffer right now.
Yeah, and there is vacancies on BT, isn't there?
There are vacancies on BT. Apply if you know something about security.
So do you find that when operating in different countries, your security stance, because the laws are different, is a hassle in itself and introduces vulnerabilities? I think that's probably one for you, Danny. And Hila, you're Europe as well.
I think, yeah. So yes, rules are different in different countries. And this is why a company like BT can really add a value.
Yeah.
Because we do have this real global reach, we do have this real global understanding of the legislative landscape, and this is where we can actually help.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier 180 countries.
Yeah. Look, it's not about laws necessarily, is it? You know, it's not about. It's down to the customer. It's down to understanding what the impact is. There's nothing in law from my time in law enforcement that says that you have to report a crime. So actually this is about security, this is about your own vulnerabilities, and this is about, from a business perspective, is minimising the impact of that wrongdoing, if you like, or it not necessarily wrongdoing, it might be a bit of negligence within there, or an oversight or anything else. So it's, cyber attacks aren't necessarily all criminal acts, they are just an exploit or a failing somewhere along the line.
Okay. So Hila, Danny, the pair of you have been in BT just under or just over a year now?
I'm under a year.
I'm under too, yes.
The two things I'd really like to ask you is, number one, what made you join BT in the first place, and especially BT Security? And then following on from that, really, what have you been impressed with in BT? And what's actually kept you involved all the time? So Hila, if I start with yourself.
Okay, and yeah, interesting question. Well, I joined 8 months ago, so it's still kind of fresh in my mind. Why is it that I choose to join BT? And there are three core reasons. And the first one are the people. So I used to work with BT before as a partner when I worked for a vendor, and I got a very good impression of the people I worked with. I could see top professionals, and when that opportunity arrived of working again with the same team but as part of the organization, I thought it will be great. Second reason is that unique setup inside BT, where the same group that protect BT, that does the internal security for BT, is basically the same unit that provides the commercial security services to our customers. And it makes us look much more credible in the market. We really use real experience that we gain protecting ourselves, one of the most complex, biggest organizations in the world, and we take this experience, bring it to our customers. It has a lot of value. The third one is that global presence, that global network reach that allows us to harness a lot of information, create very advanced cyber analytics, which I thought back then are very interesting, and I actually still think are very interesting and really gives us an edge in what we can provide to our customers.
Brilliant, no, sounds good. And Danny, yourself?
Yeah, likewise, I'd had interaction with BT. I was aware of the individuals around the security environment. I'd spent the last 3 or 4 years working within the cyber crime environment, trying to ensure that businesses, small, medium enterprise as well, get consistent and coherent messaging. So I ended up being the national coordinator for cyber security advisors in the UK with law enforcement, and we worked to sort of demystify and deconflict the advice and guidance that was out there in partnership with CERT UK and the NCSC, as is now, to really get that consistency in advice and learn the lessons and share intelligence and get big business to share the intelligence for little business as well. So it was a natural segue for me to come into BT, albeit that from a threat intelligence environment, an investigations environment I have responsibility for, is much more comfortable around my old world from an investigations. But the key thing is about protecting people, protecting BT, and it's been a natural transition for me across to BT itself.
Brilliant. No, Danny, Hila, thank you very much for your time today. I think the two key takeaways really for everyone watching is, number one, get yourself signed up to our daily security headlines on BT.
Absolutely.
And number two, get in touch with your account manager and make sure you're speaking to us about any security concerns that you have.
And check out our new cyber index, which is now available online.
Brilliant. Hila, Danny, as I said, thank you very much for your time. It's been great for me. And thank you very much, everyone, for watching.